Hey up everybody, welcome back to VELOGAMES and the I'll Do Cycling YouTube channel, where today I am going to be previewing the Strade Bianche race. Of course, this is the round 1 of the Superclasico, so strap in for a long season up until whenever Il Lombardia is this year. Let's go and talk about through all the riders, well pretty much all the riders, and I'll tell you the ones which I think you should be looking out for and the ones who perhaps you should consider putting onto your VELOGAMES team. As far as I can tell, there are 3 big favourites in this race, and that is Tadej Pogacar, Julian Alaphilippe and Tom Pidcock. Of course, that is no surprise to anybody. The fortunate thing is that you can have all 3 of them if you so wished, and then you have 3 4-pointers alongside them. That isn't the most kind of brilliant thing, because the 4-pointers probably won't get you a load of points, but you might get lucky with some of them. Of course, that is one team option. When I go through the riders, yes, Pogacar is the most expensive, followed by Alaphilippe. Casper Asgreen is 26, but he won't do very well in this race. Of course, his price is at high because he is expected to do well in the Cobble Classics later on, and then Pidcock is also 26. I think this is all very fair pricing considering just how good Pogacar was at the one-day races last year. It makes sense that he is very expensive because he will do really well in future one-day kind of hilly classics. I think that Greg Van Avermaet is a decent pick for 24, but if you can muster the 2 credits to try and upgrade him to Pidcock, I'd say probably do that, just because Pidcock is, I think this is a big target for him. You know, Omloop and Kerner, he was taking it not easy, but he was definitely kind of testing his legs. I think this is the first big goal of his for the season. Other guys above 20 points don't actually look too great. Michael Matthews, Gianni Moscon. Valverde, yes, did well in that smaller Spanish kind of stage race, but like the competition there wasn't great, no offense. But so like he's got decent legs, but I'm not convinced about how he's going to do in this race. I think he'll probably come inside the top 10. Bardet will likely come inside the top 10 if it's a bit like 2018, if it's a bit muddy or something. He has looked pretty good this season, but he wasn't brilliant. At the UAE Tour, Barguil I'd probably avoid. I think the best 20 pointers you've got are Tige and Kuznavois, especially Kuznavois. You know, this race is very similar to, well, it's kind of like Britannia Classic, but with a lot of gravel sectors. And Kuznavois really fits the bill for this race, despite the fact that he's never really done too well at this race. In fact, I'm not sure if he's competed at this race. Tige will have a bit of more freedom considering that Wout isn't here and also Mathieu van der Poel isn't here, so Tige will likely fall into the leadership role for Jumbo-Visma, making him a bit more of a better pick. Other than that, other kind of 20 pointers, Fuglsang, Mohoric, I'm not massive fans of. Mohoric would be another decent pick, but I'm not expecting him to finish inside the top 10, to be honest with you. I think that he's more focused towards perhaps Milan San Remo, which fits him a bit better. The best 18 pointers, well, I think that it's Tim Wellens. Out of the 5 that you've got, Dumoulin, Lopez, I just don't see being particularly useful in this race. Ulissi will likely be working for either Covey or for Tadej Pogacar. Valgren hasn't looked great this season, which ultimately leads to Tim Wellens. You know, the man who's just been flying so far this season. It makes sense that he is the best 18 pointer, so I'd probably be recommending him above all the others. The best 16 pointers are Bilbao or Alessandro Covey, especially since Bilbao's just finished on the podium of the UAE Tour. Covey's just won. He's won a couple of races this year and he's looked really good. Frolic Honore and Conrad just haven't shown enough for me this season, but I do think that Covey would be my preferred one, just because he's almost the second option for UAE, and like if he's let loose and is allowed to attack, Pogacar anchors to move behind. That could ultimately become a very dangerous attack. The best 14 pointers, you know, you could have the debutant Sergio Higuita. He makes his debut at this race. Lorenzo Rota was only beaten by, you know, the 3 UAE riders at the Trofeo La Guiliana just the other day as well, so he would be another good pick. And maybe Gianni Vermeersch, especially considering that Mathieu van der Poel isn't here. The best 12 pointers, really, there aren't that many great ones. I don't really rate any of them particularly highly. So of course Sepp Kuss did good at the Delorme Classic, I think it was, and maybe Tom Schoens, considering that Trek don't have like an out and out leader for this race by the looks of things. The best 10 pointers actually come from the guys who were some of the best 6 pointers last year, and that would be Andreas Klon and Quinn Simmons. Of course, neither of them look particularly on fire at the moment. I think arguably a better idea to do would be to go 2 points cheaper and pick Samuel Battistella or Michael Gogol. Of course, Gogol has finished inside the top 10 in the last 2 editions of this race, making him an incredibly good rider. And Battistella looked good at the Volta Algarve, but hasn't quite looked on form in the last 2 weeks, which makes me a bit apprehensive about him. maybe Quentin Hermans, especially considering he comes from a cyclocross background, or Jonathan Navarez, who looked really good at Omloop, attacking in tandem with Tom Pidcock. Other than that, the other 8 pointers don't look particularly great, apart from maybe Edith Skelling or Maxime Van Hils. Those would be the only other ones who I'd really recommend. 6 pointers, actually, they're quite light on the ground in terms of quality. For me, my favourite one is Leonard Kemner, just because of how well he's been doing recently, that stage win for Ruta del Sol, and also just a couple of other good results since then. Really makes him the standout kind of favourite from all the 6 pointers. But other than that, you don't have too many great ones. Luis Mas is quite known to get inside a breakaway, and Stefano Oldani would be my second choice behind Leonard Kemner, since he looked good. I think it was also at the Durham Classic, and Quentin Pacher has also looked okay, and since Groupama FDJ don't really have a big leader for this race, I'd say that Pacher might be given a bit more freedom to do his own thing. Other than that, the 6 pointers don't look massively great. Maybe Carlos Rodriguez, but he'll be working for Pidcock. Mauro Schmidt will be working for Julian Alaphilippe. Although he did win the stage of the Giro d'Italia last year, which was kind of Strade Bianche-esque, so maybe Mauro Schmidt might be a bit more deadly than I'm giving him the credit for. And also Marijn van den Berg, who I've made a video on. EF also very similar to kind of Groupama FDJ. They don't come with a big leader either, which means that Marijn could be given a bit more freedom as well, and I think that'd be really good for such a young rider to be given that kind of freedom. And then the 4 pointers, again, fairly light on the ground. I think your options are either to pick somebody who's going to go in the breakaway, which would likely be stacking up on the Aola Cometa riders, or maybe the Drone Hopper riders. Your other option is to try and pick guys who are going to get assist points, maybe somebody who's going to sneak inside the top 20 as well. And I think you do have options for all of those. Of course, like I said, if you just wanted to go for the breakaway riders, just pick like 3 Aola Cometa riders and hope for the best. But I think that's kind of, you will utterly end up with probably a few of those who won't get you any points. I think the best 4 pointers for me are Milan Vader. Well, actually, they're the ones who I already have selected at the bottom. So for me, they are Milan Vader, Ben Healy and Ben Turner, just because Milan Vader comes from a mountain bike background, and he also did well on that gravel stage at the Volta Comunitat Valenciana. So I like him for that. I like Ben Turner because he could get assist points for Tom Pidcock, which again, I really like. And Ben Healy was in the breakaway for Omloop Het Nieuwsblad and for Koen Brussel Koen, which makes me think that perhaps he will also get in the breakaway for Strade Bianche. Of course, he's got the capabilities of doing that since we've just seen him doing it. That makes ultimately quite a lot of sense to me. In terms of what teams I'd be recommending people go with, ultimately option number 1 is to go with what I have on screen right now, which is to pick the big 3 and then 3 4 pointers, whichever 4 pointers those may be. You can copy the ones I've got, you can pick some different ones. Your other option is to try and go kind of not put all your eggs into one basket and try and remove one of the big 3 and put in somebody like Tim Vellens or Alessandro Covi or something like that instead. In this case, I would take out Vellens, and then you can put in like a 16 pointer like Covi or Bilbao, and then you also have 2 points left over, and you can put those onto Ben Turner or Healy. Say I put them onto Healy, and then you put on a 6 pointer. I'll just go with Leonard Kemner because I said that I thought that he was the best. So in this case, what you have is, instead of having 3 kind of riders, you got 4. So that just gives you a bit more breadth in case one of them has a crash, one of them's going to move behind. So it just gives you a bit more flexibility. And for me, those are the 2 kind of big options in terms of teams. But, you know, those aren't the only possibilities. Let me know in the comments down below who you are thinking of putting on your teams, if you think that I've missed anybody out. And of course, if you have any kind of teams, please send them to me over Twitter or tell me in the comments down below. I'll be more than happy to provide a second opinion on all of your teams. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I've had a lot of fun making this, and all I'd like to say is to keep safe out there, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Salut!